Well, hi, it's Simon Breakspear, and thanks so much for the invitation to join you as Catholic Education Tasmania principals and system leaders gather together to think about what it's going to take this Teach First initiative that you've been formulating and get it to actually work within the unique context of the schools that you lead. One of the things that I've learned about over the last decade or more of studying and being deeply engaged in evidence-informed school improvement is that principals need to get really clear about the structures, processes, and culture they can set up within their school to enable every educator to keep getting better. And let's be clear, we know our educators are feeling overloaded and overwhelmed. And one of the dangers of being in that state is that we can reach what the literature would call a premature plateau of expertise. We spend most of our days teaching from the instructional habits that we've already learnt, but we're so flat out every day, every week, every term, we often actually push back the idea of practice improvement, or we simply build new knowledge without actually changing our instructional repertoire. A couple of years ago, we got together with basically hundreds of schools and thousands of teachers and started to try to design a better approach to sustainable professional learning that worked for overloaded teachers, that was based in evidence. And over the last period of time, we've seen hundreds of schools and thousands of educators field test this approach and make real shifts in what they do. You see, the sprints approach, the teaching sprints approach, puts us a real focus on making tiny shifts to practice. It's interesting, but when we feel overloaded and someone asks us to transform or make big change, sometimes we can hold that together for a while and then we revert to defaults. The sprints approach is all about cumulative incremental gains. It says, let's just work on one thing a term, and if we work on that well and deeply and actually upgrade our instructional habits, then over 1 year, we might improve 3 to 4 things. Over 2 years, 6 to 8 things. Over a 3 year school improvement cycle, we might have every one of our educators improve 9 to 12 things. And if those 9 to 12 things were built on the evidence base, on the things that we know have the highest likelihood of supporting more students to learn, have the highest likelihood of helping more teachers to be more effective and more efficient, then teachers are going to start pretty quickly getting that feedback loop that as they try out evidence-informed ideas, that actually the learning improves and the teaching gets easier. The teaching gets easier because as we become more effective, as we become more efficient, as we're getting more information about what students have understood and then responding to that more effectively, actually over time, we save ourselves time in the classroom and we save ourselves time through those additional tier 2 and tier 3 interventions that we won't need at the same scale if we can actually really have this evidence-informed practice happening. And then thirdly, I want to say that sprints is about deliberate practice. It's about saying that we know from the expertise literature that humans who get better at crafts, whether it's the piano or whether it's surgery, engage in deliberate practice. Now, deliberate practice isn't just about knowing about something else. It's not even just dabbling in something. It's about intentionally saying, I'm going to work on something just outside of my current kind of capability or repertoire, and I'm going to receive some feedback from others and I'm going to work intensely at it until I actually level up my capacity in that area. And sprints is generous, it's sustainable. It says, look, we don't ask you to deliberately practice multiple parts of your craft in the same term. Work on one area, work on the learning and the unlearning and the rhythm and routine you're going to have to set up to get this to work. Be kind to yourself. Take 4, 5, 6 weeks to really go deep on that, and then try to embed that into your instructional repertoire. Because as you think about these system sprints, whether it's going to be on sequencing, on modeling, on questioning and feedback, on daily and weekly review, on guided practice, you see, what we want is for teachers not just to know about what Rosenshine was thinking here, not just know about that evidence, but have found a way to take it and actually incorporate it into their ongoing instructional repertoire, their habits. The beauty of that is, get this, imagine this year they do some work, say in term 3, on sequencing and learning. And they work hard at that as a team, and they talk about it, and they talk about where they were struggling and why there's some unlearning involved and why it's going to change how they do curriculum planning. Maybe another time they do some work on questioning and they become really aware actually that they often go for the volunteers rather than the non-volunteers, about how actually the quality of their questions never really get into sort of the probing of the how and the what and the why, and they become self-aware of that and they develop new approaches to how they run their full class questioning. So what I want to say is that sprint that they run in term three this year, or term two or term three next year, I want those practices to be still playing out in 2028 and 2029. I want the students that they're teaching in 4 or 5 years to still benefit from that sprint. How? Because the sprint isn't really about just the change that occurs in that period. The sprint is about giving our teachers the opportunity and the knowledge and the time and the peers to actually make an ongoing and sustainable change to their instructional repertoire that they're going to be able to use for the rest of their career. So I want to say good luck for your discussions today. Doing large scale implementation work is difficult. And I'm thrilled that you're coming together collectively to ask the questions about how can we do this and what are our first best steps. But I can tell you, having seen this work play out in hundreds and hundreds of schools across multiple systems around the world, that teaching sprints work. They're field tested, they're reasonable, they're manageable, and they add up over time. And as you empower your staff to take these next steps together, you're going to build a real sense of collective efficacy and a professional growth culture together as their teams within that school, within a system, moves forward together. And that's why, as a researcher, as a friend of the system, as someone watching on and cheering you on, I cannot wait to see what you do this year and in the years beyond as you bring together terrific ideas about the what from Rosenshines and field tested and proven ideas about the how in the sprints methodology. And you find a way to make it work within your school and across your system. I'll be cheering you on, Catholic Education Tasmania. I hope to come and see it in person sometime soon. I'd love to learn from the lessons that you learn in your implementation journey. Good luck.